Today, Conor McGregor has announced that he will make his return to the octagon in June of 2024 against Michael Chandler. Has Conor succeeded in making Michael Chandler sit out for so long he's even the playing field? And has the mental fatigue been so great on Michael Chandler when you're trying to wrangle the snow unicorn that is Conor McGregor to agree to a fight, to train for a fight, to step into the octagon, to even make a press conference? All of this has weighed heavy on Michael Chandler. Will he be ready in June? Also, Leon Edwards has announced that he will defend his welterweight championship against a to-be-named opponent at UFC 300. Who is that person going to be? And is it going to be a person that we should already remember the name of? All of this and more on today's episode, and the very first episode of 2024 of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up? What's happening? We right back in it. We right back with it. It is January the 1st. Almost forgot. 2024, the first day of the year, and your boy Matt is out here bringing you this heat once again on Matter of Fact MMA. So let's start out first with Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has now also, before I get started, I just want to say, go Ravens. Go Ravens. We going to the Super Bowl. We gonna make our way through the playoffs, and we going to the Super Bowl, and Lamar Jackson is gonna be the 2-time MVP. What's up? What's happening? Anyway, let's get back to the video. So, let's start out with Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has now announced, he actually released this information on New Year's Eve, so yesterday, that he is gonna make his way back to the octagon at UFC International Fight Week, which is going to go down in June this year instead of July. And he's making his return against Michael Chandler. Now, he's joking right now that the fight is going to be at 185. I don't see it happening at 185. I think it's just a kind of like, gamesmanship against Michael Chandler. Because if you've seen any photos of Conor McGregor, he definitely looks like he is leaning down. So I don't see him fighting at 185 pounds. But what I think is very intriguing about this fight is when you look at these two guys, the last time Conor McGregor fought was actually, I believe it was, as I check my Nizotes, it was July of 2021. The last time that Michael Chandler fought was November of 2022. Michael Chandler is going to be 38 years old once they meet in the octagon in June. Conor McGregor will be 35. So here's the thing. We know that Conor McGregor is coming off of a horrible leg injury. We know he didn't fare well in his last two fights, both against Dustin Poirier. So we already know that. We know that Michael Chandler hasn't fared well against the top competition. At 155 pounds, his last win was against Tony, in which he lost the first round to Tony. He just caught him with a crazy kick in the second round and knocked him out. So with that being said, when you're looking at these two, I gotta ask the question. Did Conor McGregor manage to keep Michael Chandler on the sideline for so long that he is actually even the playing field of their bout coming up later this year in June? Because, as long as I've been watching mixed martial arts, one thing is true. Most of these fighters, when they take large amounts of time off, when they return to the octagon, they're not the same, or they don't look the same. They don't fight the same. We just saw that with Colby Covington, and he actually admitted as much. One of the few, top tier fighters that I've seen leave the octagon and make their way back after a long period of time and fare well in a war would actually be Dominic Cruz. After he took off 2.5, almost 3 years, maybe even longer, to come back and defeat TJ Dillashaw for the Bantamweight Championship, which a lot of people believe that TJ should have won by the scorecards. I actually had Dominic Cruz winning that. But when you look at a lot of other fighters, like John Jones made his return after a long time. But I mean, that fight was so quick due to a mistake by Gane, Cyril Gane, getting pinned up against the cage and then getting tapped out. Who knows how John would have fared if that fight would have went longer. So you see a lot of the time when these fighters take a long amounts of time off, when they come back to the cage, there's just no substitute for being active. So, but when you look at this, when you're talking about the king of snow, Conor McGregor, I'm talking about this guy. One of his biggest edges in his entire career is the mental edge, the mental warfare that he could play against his opponents. And I feel, and I've said this in numerous videos on my channel, that what is really doomed Conor McGregor's his career, more so, it was definitely time out of the octagon, but it was also he lost that mental edge. Because once he got exposed by Khabib, and he started getting in trouble in the media, and then he goes out there, he takes these double losses to Dustin Poirier. That level of being the elite fighter, that level of being able to go in there and talk trash and get guys off their game plan, it kind of disappeared. So with that being said, he's going in there with guys who aren't really fearful of him. They're not really worried about him. They're not really buying into the trash talk. As opposed to years ago when he was, trash talking Eddie Alvarez, and the moment just engulfed Eddie, and Conor goes in there and does work in one of his best performances. Or you could talk about when he beat Jose Aldo after like a year of running through, this world tour with Jose Aldo and pulling his belt away, and it was just that presence of Conor just engulfed Jose Aldo to the point that when they fought, Jose just wanted to get that over with and quickly, and Conor snubbed him with that left hand. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at it, he's always had that mental edge. When he came back against Donald Cerrone, he made it extremely clear that I'm going out there, I respect Donald Cerrone. This was a nicer Conor. He respected him. He respected him as a father and everything. But he made it clear. It was an interview that was done by Ariel Helwani when he was talking to Conor about, if he could still go in there and perform. This was before the Cerrone fight. And Conor just straight up said, he was like, mate, I could beat him if I had the flu. You know what I'm saying? It showed that, that he was being nice to Don Cerrone, but he still had that level of disdain for, that level of disdain, like, bro, you're not getting ready to compete with me. You know what I'm saying? I'm the notorious Conor McGregor, you know what I'm saying? But now this has been years removed. We done seen all the videos. We done seen homie high, drunk, all types of things on his Instagram. You know what I'm saying? Wilding out. We've seen him on these yachts. We've seen him, behind bars. We've seen him in handcuffs. We've seen everything now. We've seen all the allegations. We've seen him partying at the Miami Heat Arena. We done seen it all, you know what I'm saying? So that level of mental warfare that he could play on an opponent has kind of gone. So then when you think about his skills, granted, the man stays in good shape. The man trains. What seems to be he trains for the most part all the time. Now, he's not fight camp training. Don't get it twisted. But he stays in good shape, probably works on his skills a little bit, but not, when you're talking about you're 200, 300, 400, 500 million up, you're not going in there and training on the level that you were when you only had 1 or 2 million and you're trying to get to the big money. But he does stay in shape. But when you look at this fight between him and Michael Chandler, I believe that Conor has managed to even the playing field with Michael Chandler. Granted, Michael Chandler wasn't going out there and setting the world on fire. As I said, his last win was against Tony Ferguson, and he barely won that one. He caught Tony off guard with that crazy kick that no one has ever seen Michael Chandler throw before or since. So, you know what I'm saying? And he lost the first round to Tony. So with that being said, still, prior to all of this time being taken off by Michael Chandler, waiting on the Conor fight, you would have to assume that Michael Chandler, who's been competing at the top with Dustin Poirier, with Justin Gaethje, with all of these guys, while Conor's been sitting out on the sidelines, you would assume that Michael Chandler would go in there and do work. But now Conor's made him sit out for a long time. Like I said, he hasn't fought since 2022, and he lost that fight against Dustin Poirier. And he took a beating in that fight. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at, I mean, he gets finished. He gets tapped out. He gets submitted by Dustin. So, I mean, when I'm looking at all of this, Michael Chandler's taken a ton of damage in his career, and now he's set out for so long. He's been active. Granted, he's been training as well. You know, he's got his own gym. He stays active. He's always in tremendous shape. But I believe now Conor McGregor has evened the playing field. By making Michael Chandler sit out for so long, Conor was only out 1 year longer. Now, Conor did have that horrible leg injury, snapped his leg in half for the most part. But, he took some special peptides, allegedly, special supplements, allegedly, caused a whole fallout with USADA and the UFC. But, I'm sure that his leg is healed. I'm sure he's ready to go. I mean, when you got the type of money Conor McGregor's got, you're not going to step into the octagon without your leg being prepared. So when I'm looking at all of this, I think the man has actually evened the playing field between him and Michael Chandler. To where, and he's younger than Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler will be 38 by the time they step in the octagon. Conor's only going to be 35. It's a few years difference, but at 155 pounds, or even if they fight at 170, which is the weight class Michael Chandler doesn't fight at all, I think he may have evened the playing field by making Chandler sit out for so long and be so stressed out about when is this fight going to take place? When is this going to happen? When am I finally going to be back in the octagon? You know what I'm saying? When am I going to earn the big paycheck? I know he's got podcasts, he's got other stuff he's doing in between time, but Chandler hasn't earned that big fighter paycheck in a while. So he's going to be hungry. But he's also got a lot of mental fatigue because, as you can see from his interviews and things over this last 2 or 3 year period, he's been gunning for this fight forever and he hasn't gotten it yet. Now, supposedly it's supposed to happen now, but who knows? Conor might continue to play games, still have the date set in June, but act like he's not going to fight, then act like he's back in, then act like he's back out. All of this weighs on Michael Chandler as he's trying to prepare to go in the octagon and fight this guy. As well as we don't really know what version of Conor we're going to get. The last 2 fights with Dustin, Conor was, he's actually said, and from a lot of his people that train with him, he was training to go into a boxing match possibly with Manny Pacquiao. If he would have won either one of them Dustin fights, he got washed. So, I mean, this is going to be a different Conor. In my opinion, I don't know. It might be the same Conor, but who knows? He might go back to his kick game. Who knows? So I think this fight's going to be a lot more even than what it would have been had the fight went down last year in 2023 or the end of 2022 or any of these times when, well, I guess it couldn't be at the end of 2022 because of his injured leg. But 2023, whatever. If it could have went down sooner than June of 2024 is what your boy's saying. So we will see how this will work out, how Conor McGregor would fare. But I'm not making a pick yet, of course, because who knows if this man's ever going to make it back in the octagon. But he may have just evened the playing field. Let's move on. We also have Leon Edwards has announced that he will fight at UFC 300 and more than likely defend his welterweight championship. And there's kind of like a, there's questions about who he's actually going to fight. I mean, right now it's looking like the only person he could go in there and defend his championship against, as far as guys that are in the rankings, would probably be Belal Muhammad. That's not a huge fight because, Belal Muhammad doesn't have that fan support. But at the same time, it's the right fight to make, considering that Shavkat is currently out right now with a foot injury. So I don't see Shavkat being able to come back in time for this fight in April, which is, it's when UFC 300 is scheduled. So if he's going to defend it against a contender, a current contender in the welterweight division, then you're probably going to be looking at Bilal Muhammad. And if that's going to happen, I would think that the UFC is not looking to make that be the main event of that pay-per-view, because probably is not going to sell well even if you stack the card, because Leon Edwards, while those of us that we ride with Leon, you letting him bully your son with the guys that are riding with him, what I'm saying, that's one thing, but he doesn't have that fan support, and Lord knows Bilal Muhammad definitely don't have no fan support. You know what I'm saying? People just want Bilal Muhammad to disappear, and he just keeps winning fights, and he's still there. So, not sure who Leon's gonna defend the belt against. It wouldn't shock me if the UFC pulls a rabbit out the hat and pulls some veteran contender that hasn't fought in a while, or tries to slide in Nate Diaz back in the octagon. Something strange. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't surprise me if they try to pull a rabbit out the hat and side swipe Bilal Muhammad and come up with somebody new. They'll try to go in there and fight the champion. You know what I'm saying? Leon Edwards, couldn't remember his name for a second. But if I was talking about Bilal Muhammad, remember the name. But I couldn't remember the name of Leon Edwards. But nevertheless, we will see who he will fight. Like I said, y'all be on the lookout. Your boy Matt kind of surveying the landscape. It wouldn't shock me if the UFC didn't go for the numbers bag, meaning pulling a contender out of the hat that no one expects, probably doesn't deserve the title shot, to try to capitalize on some sort of popularity, a la a Nate Diaz. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. Lord knows Nate don't deserve it. But we will see what goes on there. So with all of that being said, that's just what it is. That's what's going on right now in the MMA sphere, in the MMA news. Like I said, Conor McGregor making his return against Michael Chandler, not at UFC 300, but at UFC Fight Week later this year, June of 2024. Also, Leon Edwards will defend his welterweight championship against a unnamed opponent at this time at UFC 300. Who knows if these two will ever make it into the octagon when you're dealing with Conor. And I have no idea who the UFC is going to pull out besides Bilal Muhammad to fight for the welterweight championship. So we'll see how all of that plays out. I appreciate you guys for joining me for the first episode of 2024 and another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.